We have found the evidence that proves that there is a mass conspiracy. You're talking about like people all the way down to Candace Owens, and you know anytime you're on the same side as Candace Owens, you need to do some self-reflections. Within this like version of masculinity and everybody who's participating in it, there's no place where a man can just be valued because he's alive. What's going on, you guys? So today what I'm trying to get into is the fallout from the A$AP Rocky and Rihanna photo, as well as the Jonathan Majors photo. So I'm sure you guys saw it, but I'm just gonna give you guys a quick backstory. So Rihanna did a feature in British Vogue. She had a photo shoot, and in one of the photos, she was at the center of the photo as the feature is about her. She's at the center of the photo, and walking behind her, holding her hand, and their baby is A$AP Rocky, who's kissing the baby on the forehead. And the baby seems to be having a great time. The other photo is the Jonathan Majors. He's sitting on the back of a sofa, and he has his legs crossed, and he has a pink fur coat on. And I initially saw the backlash to these when I was on my Twitter, and I saw a tweet from Dr. Boyce Watkins, who I never see on my Twitter because I don't follow him, and he said, ladies, he said, what did this fool talk? What is this man talking about? He says, ladies, this is how Hollywood defines black masculinity. And that's why so many of your men are defeated and weak. And when I saw this, I just rolled my eyes and I didn't think much of it, honestly. I just thought it was an overreaction, somebody who was trying to get some clicks and some views. And then I scrolled down and saw that there was like a little firestorm over these photos, right? And people were tripping. And it was evidence, right? Like we have found, it was the smoking gun, right? Like we have found the evidence that proves that there is a mass conspiracy to emasculate black men and feminize black men in America. And you're talking about like people all the way down to Candace Owens, and you know anytime you're on the same side as Candace Owens, you need to do some self-reflection because she's maybe the worst. And so you've seen comments that I came across that stuck with me. A$AP Rocky is a proud mother of two. Rihanna clearly is the man of the house. If Jonathan Majors isn't coming out of the closet, then this photo is in bad taste. And then you got my absolute favorite, which is the geometry of emasculation, right? So they done went so deep into the game where they got the lines and the body posture where they can now quantify. This is like advanced analytics, right? And I love hoop. So this is like a PER. This is like, this is the advanced analytics to explain just exactly how emasculated you are. And I thought that initially I thought it was just an overreaction, but the more that I dug into it, I realized that it says something very interesting about masculinity and how it is framed in today's society. So what I've noticed is that there's a contradiction within the alpha male, high value male rhetoric. So the way that I see it is that rhetoric is effective because of the way that they present a triumphant and powerful depiction of masculinity, and they do so by creating a contrast. Two of their major talking points are the ails that average men have to go through, right? The ways that our society is shaped that cause these men to be disaffected, cause these men to be invisible, right? So the average man is 5'8", when nobody wants to date short guys, right? Average male makes $40,000. All women are looking for high value men. So those men are invisible. And they juxtapose that, they contrast that with the life of a high value man, right? So the high value man, every woman wants him, and the women have to act right around him. Otherwise he can just leave because he has just the pick of the litter. They get to say what they want. They get to do what they want. They get to be arrogant. They get to be all the things that society tells you couldn't be, because high value men are the engine that makes society move forward. What has always struck me about this version of masculinity is that despite the powerful picture of masculinity that it presents, it's also within the same exact rhetoric shows that version of masculinity is very fragile and fleeting. They identify and they draw the boundaries around a high value man as being somebody who makes, low to mid six figures at the least. And then they highlight the fact that very, very few men ever will make that amount of money. So by default, you have a depiction of the pinnacle of masculinity as being something that a vast majority of men will never be able to reach. But there is also a behavioral aspect to all of this as well. They talk about being emotional, and it's bad to be overly emotional, but that overly emotional is spoken about in very gendered ways. There's a lot of kind of violent ideation. You have to be willing to be violent. You have to be willing to kill go all the way up to the line to kill in order to protect what's yours. And it's not just protecting your property. It's not just protecting your family, but it's also protecting your manhood. Whereas on the flip side, any of the emotions that are tied to femininity, you can't do those things at all, right? So you're not supposed to cry because you'll get punished. The world will not ever see you the same as a man if you cry, especially a woman. You're not allowed to get depressed. If you get life is hard, right? So if life busts you upside your head and you get depressed, then this is a sample. This is an example of your weakness. And if you're weak, then that's feminine, and this is not allowed within this framework of masculinity. And the fascinating part about this is that people patrol these boundaries, and then they punish people who step outside the boundaries. And what this leaves us with is it leaves us in a position where men don't have a refuge within this version of masculinity, and everybody who's participating in it. There is no refuge. There's no place where a man can just be valued because he's alive, because he's breathing, without achieving, without having to do anything special. There's no place like that exists. And so because of this, I get it, right? I understand if this is what you're consuming all the time, it makes sense why, there are disaffected men who really get off on watching content where women are getting dunked on, right? Where these arrogant women who are, these modern women, they have these careers, they have these degrees, you got your PhD, but nobody cares. This rhetoric, this shit is crazy, right? Like you go on this, you flip through this content and it's like, oh, you have a master's degree, nobody cares. Oh, you have a PhD, nobody cares. Oh, you make $200,000 in a society where you have such poverty, and then you point out the fact that only 2%, 5% of people make $200,000. The fact that you're within the top 5% of earners in our society, nobody cares, right? This shit is ridiculous. It makes absolutely no sense. And I get where the happiness comes from when you have somebody who's a good speaker and going hard at these women and tells these women this, and then the women show and then the women show that weakness that hits them and it hurts them. And there's a whole multi-million-dollar industry on the internet set up just to see that pain from women. And so while I don't agree with it at all, it conceptually makes sense why that is an appealing thing. Conversely, it makes sense why men patrol the boundaries of masculinity and point out and tear down other men. The issue that I have is that I don't see that as being something that's sustainable or transformational, right? So I don't see, let's say you have a disaffected man. Let's say that man is struggling and he needs to pull himself out of the situation that he's in. There's no amount of watching these videos, dunking on feminists or tweeting about other men and tearing other men down. There's no amount of that that's going to pull you out of your situation. There's no amount of that that's going to make you feel any better about yourself over the long term. It's all just a short dopamine rush. And to me, that's a major weakness. And it also doesn't do any work to transform our society in any way that allows you to be valued anymore until you achieve, right? So you're basically just fucked. Because that version of masculinity does not allow for transformation, I think there needs to be another framework that does allow for such transformation. And for me, I went through this experience myself because I fed into all this, right? I'm a young man in the United States who was lost for years. So just a bit about my backstory. I was 27 years old and I was a loser at that point. I was a high school athlete, thought I was going to be a star. I mean, I was a star. Your boy was nice. But I was a star, and then I blew it. I messed it all up, and I lost my status, and I lost my way. I lost my identity. I lost everything. And at 27 years old, I had literally nothing. I had no clothes of my own. I had no job. I had nowhere to go. I was living on the street. I had nothing, absolutely nothing. My family wouldn't talk to me. It was a wrap. I was at the absolute bottom, and I was cool with being there. The place where my mentality was I was cool with being there. I had failed. I had accepted the fact that I had failed at life, and I was cool being at the bottom. I had tried so many times to be this responsible person, to be this man who I thought I wanted to be, that I had tried so many times and failed. I didn't see a path forward. How I began to stack was I completely changed the way that I viewed masculinity. As a mentor of mine introduced to me an idea of defining my masculinity by only things that I had 100% control over. if you attach your value of yourself as a man to things that you don't have 100% control over, to objects, to outside people's recognition, to cars, to money, then life is hard and life is fleeting. Those things come and they go, right? Like the life ebbs and it flows. And so if my manhood is attached to that thing, then that means my version of manhood, my idea of myself and who I am as a man can also come and it can go. It can be here today and it could be gone tomorrow. And anytime you have that version of masculinity, it's difficult to stack wins when you don't have anything. Right? When you're actually starting from the bottom without any of the traditional markers of manhood, it's difficult to build confidence within a framework that doesn't allow for you to be a man without the traditional markings. And so the way that he put it to me is instead of focusing on the outcomes, instead of focusing on those things that were at the end of the road, what I needed to do was focus on the process of being a man. And so what did I have control over that I could do every single day, right? So wake up on time, do the things that I said I was going to do, right? So if I told somebody I was going to do something, following through every single time, right? Being a man of my word, basically, being a good brother, being a good son, being a good uncle, right? Being there for the people in my life, being willing to sacrifice my time and my effort for somebody else's good, right? Being a fierce competitor, right? Never giving up. These were things that I could do even without anything else. I could still be the man. I could still behave like the man that I always wanted to be. And like this blew my mind because I literally was walking around. I began to be able to walk around without much, but I started to feel better about myself. And what this did for me is it fundamentally changed my life. This version of masculinity allowed me to build a self-concept, a self-esteem, an identity that was like a gift that I gave myself. Every day that I woke up, I behaved in a certain manner, and it changed everything. It changed the way that the world received me. It changed the way that people acted when I walked into the room. People were now smiling and happy to see me. It changed the outcomes that I was having when I was doing things, right? So when I went to a task and I gave it my 100% effort, when I was accountable for the mistakes that I made, then I started to build a reputation of a person who does those things. And I started to reap the benefits of that. I started to have good standing at work. When I got on the basketball team, then I was now playing better than I had played before. And every single thing, like the sun was shining brighter, all because I now was having, but this was still with very little, right? Living in a sober living house, paying $500 rent, that if somebody else from the outside world were to see our house, they would probably say we're living in a pigsty. But I'm living in this space feeling great about myself, knowing that while I'm not at the end goal, I'm on the way, right? And this is important. And so this version of masculinity is what helped me transform my life from a person at 27 years old who's living under a bridge with absolutely nothing and nobody and no support group, no family, nothing, to a person that over the last 10 years has become a nationally recognized student athlete and now is a PhD student at one of the top schools in the nation, right? So that is a fundamental change that happened, and to me it's because I changed my self-concept and I changed my idea of what being a man was into something that was transformational, that allowed me to then transform my life. So ultimately that's my take, and I'm really interested to see what you guys think, about like my version, the transformational version of masculinity that that my mentor talked to me about, that I used to change my life. I'm interested to see whether anybody else has kind of like a different take and something that really worked for them, because I don't think there's only one way to skin a cat here in this situation. I think there's a lot of different pathways that need to be opened, and we can only really be exposed to those by hearing each other's stories. So if you like this type of content, please leave a like, please subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you thought about this idea, and then I'm gonna keep shooting you guys these videos and we're gonna keep getting into it. So, all right, peace.